Welcome to Scoop Forward Order. Happy Monday. Big dividends are coming from this incredible recruiting weekend that we just had. We're going to get into all of it. Some of the guys are about to commit. Another big weekend coming up. Camps are starting this week. If you guys have not been to camps, they're the most boring thing in the entire universe. Unless you're a guy trying to earn an offer, then they're very exciting. But it is a huge week for Ohio State football. This is a big month now. It's become one of the biggest months of the year. With the official visits being added to the summer a few years ago, it is not for the faint of heart. These coaches basically work till they drop, and then they can't wait to get to that July vacation. But man, this is a long month for the coaches. So we're going to break down who's coming, who's going to jump in the boat and join the Ohio State Buckeyes as commitment, and some of our thoughts on camp. As always, we appreciate you guys kicking it with us each and every night. I hope you had a great Monday. This is a huge show because you guys make it one each and every night. So we appreciate you guys. If you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. Again, we appreciate you guys joining us every single night. Our chat is always amazing. Thank you to all of our people that are here, the Scoop family that are showing up each and every night. We appreciate you guys shepherding people in, letting people know they're appreciated, showing up. It's an unbelievable, unique experience here on Buckeye Scoop. So we appreciate you guys. And thank you guys for being here. Again, it's a great pleasure to do this along with Nevadabuck, and we don't take it for granted. So we appreciate it. If you guys have questions about anything Ohio State related or otherwise, send in a super chat. Our super chats go into Pay It Forward. And it has been an outstanding addition to what we do because we've added a ton of veterans, first responders, our police officers that we take care of. We appreciate all of you so much that are a part of our community. Thank you for all that you guys do. You don't hear that enough. So we try to say it over an overabundant amount because we really appreciate what you guys do. That being said, I'm going to bring in my good friend Nevada. Nevada, all of the official visits, everyone had got home okay. Everyone had a great time. What are your thoughts coming out of official visit weekend one?
Well, I mean, it was a great weekend, and we had talked about yesterday about how Ohio State just executed at such a high level, and we focused on a lot of the big name guys that were coming in there. But it as I've been making calls today, it's really struck me that I think one of the underreported stories of this recruiting class is going to be, and I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it, is going to be that Justin Fry and the offensive line recruiting is really stepping it up this time. We haven't seen the results yet. We're still sitting with Carter Lowe on the board right now, and a lot of hope. But I think by the time this class is done, I think this is going to be one of the better offensive line classes, at least on paper, in recent memory. And I think they're really starting to figure it out in that particular room. I know that's been a concern for a couple of years now. I think Ohio State's in on a bunch of kids. I like the way they're selling it. I like the energy with which they've kind of mobilized the entire staff in terms of a offensive line recruiting machine. And I think it's going to start paying dividends for Ohio State. And I projected that the class is going to finish at 5. I think it could go to 6 if it's the right guys. And I think that, I think they've probably got the guys. I think they've probably got the 5 or 6 identified and ready to jump into the boat on kind of a first come first serve basis. But it's kind of like in the movie Apollo 13 when he's like, this could be the biggest disaster in the history of NASA, and he's like, no, sir, I think this is going to be our finest hour. I think this is going to be Justin Fry's finest hour, and I think this 2025 recruiting class is going to be the turning point for offensive line recruiting under Fry. And we're going to start looking at him in a different light from a recruiting standpoint. I think that's how significant this class will be for him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Javon McFadden's a guy who is surging towards Ohio State. There's a lot of guys surging towards Ohio State. David Sanders finished up his visit at Clemson. He is coming to town soon. It's going to be, like I said, there's a lot of we've been close a lot, but I think that it's starting to become a tipping point. I think that Paris Johnson going where he went in the draft is something a lot of these kids identify with because a lot of these kids basically are Paris Johnson, and they want to be, they want to be in the boat. And these officials are going to be crazy. I mean, this weekend we're supposed to see Des Jones, Nate Roberts, Jackson Lloyd, Andrew Stargell, Javon McFadden, Trajan Odom, Eli Lee, Fahim, Deline, Damien. I mean, this is another massive weekend. Tavian St. Clair is supposed to be on hand. I don't know if we'll see the Sanchez family again. Maybe we won't. But again, there's a lot of guys checking out the school. And again, it's a big national field. Like I mean, you've got O lineman coming from California, Jackson Lloyd, who is one of my favorite kids in the entire class because he is a legit tackle. Andrew Stargell and Javon. Flick on Javon's tape real quick. But yeah, I think this is a big class for Justin. But I also think it's a big class for Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. Like I mean, those guys. When you're going after national recruits, I mean, you have to kick in a lot when you're the head coach. It's not obviously the position coach is mission critical, but when it's a big time guy, you got to bring that love from the head coach. So it's a good test for Ryan. I mean, Ryan's got a little bit less on his plate now that he doesn't have to run the whole offense like he used to. It'll be just to see what Chip Kelly can do. I mean, Chip Kelly has had kind of an interesting persona where people say he didn't like to recruit at UCLA and whatever, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't like to recruit either if I didn't have any support from my athletic director, no NIL money, just bad vibes all throughout the athletic department. Like I wouldn't want to recruit. It's hard. I mean, again, like now, you go against someone like Ohio State, and again, he's still got good players. He got kids that could have easily played here, but there's guys that, like some of those guys show up to UCLA, and there's no shot that they're gonna like those SFE kids, like those top drawer kids. They're not going to come to UCLA. They never have. They never will. They'll visit. If they just happen to be visiting USC for a weekend and they could drive across LA and go see UCLA, yeah, they'll come visit. But they've never gotten a kid from there, so it kind of is what it is. But yeah, I like this kid, Javon McFadden. He's a big mover. And again, it's kind of interesting because this is a kid that in the past you got to offer these kids early, but I mean, this is a kid that would have been good to see him camp again as a senior, but I don't think we're going to see that anymore. I mean, again, with these seniors being able to take an official visit, why would you make mom and dad pay for camp when they don't have to? You guys can go visit, and it's sped up the process at a position where it's really not beneficial to speed it up. And again, we talked in pre-show, but rest in peace to Larry Allen, who's the greatest guard who's ever lived, who played at Sonoma State, and 700-pound bench press, first ballot Hall of Famer, multi-time All-Pro, monster of a dude. But LA will be missed. 52 years old, tragic, too young. But what a guy that was. But again, he, like I said in pre-show, the greatest guard in history played at Sonoma State, not Alabama, not Texas, not Ohio State, not Michigan. Sonoma State. So again, it just speaks to the development and what has to happen from the time you're really about 16 to the time you're about 23. Because he was good at Sonoma State, good enough to get drafted mid rounds by the Cowboys. But yeah, that's just kind of what it is. Nevada, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, offensive line recruiting's always been one of those things where I of all the position groups, it's the one that I'm least obsessed with about star ranking. And not that 5 stars don't turn out to be good, because they do, but when you look at the offensive line, when offensive linemen introduce themselves on NFL on Sunday Night Football, and you see their colleges come up, it's always Eastern Washington, Western Kentucky, Sonoma State, Butte College, Coffeyville, GAC. I mean, offensive linemen can come from all over the place, and that's why I'm always recruited about. I'm excited about any recruit that we get, but certainly on offensive linemen, because you just never know with these guys how they're going to develop. What are the big kids that were just dominant over the little ones in high school? What are the guys that are the late bloomers, the late strength guys? Who's it going to be? But look, Ohio State's got a nice mix of this class, because you're talking about nobody's higher ranked than David Sanders, and Carter Lowe's right up there. And then you throw other guys in there. If you get Jackson Lloyd, I know they've talked about Petty, Fanuku. I mean, you've got a bunch of guys from kind of every walk of life in terms of offensive line. You've got interior guys, you've got exterior guys, you've got guys from all over the United States. Ohio State is absolutely recruiting nationally right now. And I mean, when I first started the business, it was about 60, 70% Ohio kids, And then it kind of went to, well, we'll draw a deadline. It's got to be at least 50% Ohio kids. Now it'll be interesting to see how it kind of shakes out, because Ohio State's recruiting so well nationally and is such a national brand. Um, and it is really, in the era of the super team, and I think, kids have grown up in this whole thing of NBA players kind of climbing together on the same team. I won't say it started with LeBron, but because I guess, Ray Allen and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett had kind of done it there. And, LeBron certainly took it to another level than Kevin Garnett joining Golden State. But the super team concept is alive and well with kids today. And look, it sucks when you're not the super team, and it's great when you are. Well, here's the good news for us: we are a super team. We are the hot brand. We are the hottest thing going right now with the most coveted players, the most coveted fan base, the best coaching staff, and it's great to be a Buckeye. It's great to be a Buckeye when you're on the receiving end of it. And right now we're really kind of in the double platinum years of Ohio State, with this expanded playoff, with the transfer portal, with the way that we're playing NIL. But I don't think there's an area that it's going to be more pronounced than the offensive line. And I think specifically offensive line recruiting is going to start, because we know that we're going to do well with wide receivers. We've always done well with that. And we'll do great with running backs, and Ryan Dale continue to get his quarterbacks, and James Laurinaitis get his more of a share of linebackers, et cetera, et cetera. But offensive line's been the one question mark we've had. I don't think it's going to be a question mark after this. I think we're going to finish that final group right there, and punch that ticket with 5 quality guys coming here, maybe 6, and then away we go.
Well, I think that something that people don't really get with offensive line recruiting is it's by far the hardest evaluation, by far, because these guys, they don't play 7-on-7, so you don't get to see a lot of one-on-one man coverage reps. When you watch their high school tape, 99% of the time they're just demonstrably better than anybody they go against. So you see guys just destroying people. You don't get a lot of those, oh my God, I got an SEC tackle versus an SEC defensive end for an entire game. Ooh boy, I can't wait to watch that, because it's just not how it works. There's just not that many of them spread out throughout the country, and you might only have so many reps where they go against a guy. So, these guys, they're hard to evaluate. I mean, you watch a guy dominate too much, and it's like, well, is he good? Is the competition terrible? Like, what is it? And then, like I said, there's always the biggest thing that, and I always talk about this, and you guys probably, you guys have heard it, but how are they going to do when they go against people that are as good as them? Because I've seen Ohio State just eat people alive. And again, that goes the same with the skill positions, with the quarterback, or, especially like the receivers and DBs and that type of thing, where they might torch everybody that they go against in high school, but then they go against like a real corner, and all of a sudden it's not just, Candyland anymore. But, I've seen guys wilt. I've seen guys die on the vine in practice and never recover, because they get beat to death, by really good D linemen, good D tackles. And again, you really have to test their mental toughness. And again, some of these guys, they turn into basket cases because they can't handle really talented, like super freakish, talented guys. They can't handle them in one-on-one passers, can't handle it in drills. Like they get embarrassed, they get destroyed. And, and again, like the thing I always tell people, like the great thing about football is everybody gets killed at some point. Like Urban Meyer's gotten killed, Ryan Day's gotten killed, Jim Tressell's gotten killed, Nick Saban's gotten killed. And it goes all the way down to the players. Every player has had that game where it didn't go their way. But I've seen guys like at Ohio State that were great players in high school. Guys, so I watched their highlight tapes. It's like, oh God, this guy's going to be, my role. Like there were some guys that like I recruited to Ohio State. Like, man, this is going to be my guy, man. We're going to dominate together. This is good. And like they show up and they get beat, and they get in this shell and this funk, and it's like they can never shake it. It's like a cloud over their head for all of time. And there's guys that, when they can't shake that, it's tough. I mean, Ohio State is not for the faint of heart. I mean, Ohio State will eat you up. It'll chew you up and spit you out as fast as anything in the world. If you can't handle getting beat, because you're going to get beat. I mean, I got beat like a drum as a freshman when I was trying to figure out how to play tackle, like going against Will Smith and Mike Kudla. And I mean, that was like humiliating some days, but you got to flush it all down the toilet. Like, again, I think sometimes guys that are really smart, it's almost to their detriment when it comes to football, because some of these guys, like, it's like they want to remember every single screw up or every single criticism, or my coach was mean to me, because the coaches will get after you. I mean, Ryan Day, he destroys these quarterbacks in these meetings, man. It's tough. But again, pressure bursts pipes. So he's trying to callous them. So when they get out in the game, it's like a cakewalk, because I've already felt pressure from Ryan coaching me in the practice and in the meeting rooms, and it's not a warm, toasty, comfortable environment sometimes. But I just think that's something that is like kind of the great giant question mark. Like if you're like playing Madden and you do the draft mode and there's like the 3 question marks over the guy, like that's the giant question mark is, can the kids handle Ohio State? Can they handle going against Tyleek every day or going against Jack Sawyer every day? Because like I'm telling you, like those guys, if you show up to practice and you didn't eat your Wheaties and you're not on your stuff, I usually say the other S word, but if you're not on your stuff, like you can get humiliated in practice. And I mean, it can be like one of those days where it's like an avalanche and it just won't stop, And like I said, I've seen it as a player. I've seen it as a coach. I've seen guys wilt, and it goes both ways. I mean, because it's not like just O linemen, like D linemen, they show up to Ohio State and they're used to dominating and bull rushing everybody and not using any technique, and all of a sudden they get clamped and they can't get a pass. They can't get a pass rush. They can't get a sack. Like, I mean, how many great D linemen have we seen come to Ohio State that were sack machines in high school, 10, 15 sacks their senior year? They show up and they get like 1 sack, 2 sacks, because they don't develop their moves. Because again, every level you go up, the technical stuff just gets so much better. Like you get to the NFL, man, it is like guys are really good. So that's why, like, I don't cash out every kid. Like it's real easy to just dunk on kids that are 3-star projects and say, oh, we never should have taken that guy. He wasn't any good in high school or whatever. Because like no matter what, you're still gonna miss on probably half the kids you bring in. Like, I mean, if you bring in 5, you're lucky. If you get 3 that can play, you're like an all-star. You're like it's like being the greatest gambler in history, hits on 57% of his bets. Like you're an absolute monster if you can hit on 3 out of 5 every time. But that's just the way of the world. And again, I just don't think people understand that, because, again, you're dealing with kids. You're not dealing with cyborgs. You're not dealing with robots. And these kids, they're all over the place sometimes. And the ones that are tough as nails and focused, and they've got, I always think of Elfline, because Elfline's a kid that literally nobody was excited about outside of his mom and dad and 65 people that he invited to his commitment thing in Luke Fickle's office. But like nobody's excited about us getting Pat Elfline. And he turned into a Remington Award winner, an All-American, had a great NFL career. I think he's still kicking around, but 7-8 years in the league, whatever, 2nd round or 3rd round pick. Like that's fantastic. And that was a guy that everybody in the world has said, how are we going to survive not getting Kyle Kalis? And I love Kyle Kalis. I've known Kyle Kalis through his whole recruitment, through when he was at Michigan. He wanted to come back to Ohio State. But like when we got Elfline and didn't get Kalis, you would have thought they might as well just cancel the program, full bulldoze Woody Hayes, and there's no way we'll ever survive. And you look up, you're like, wow, Pat Elfline, 3rd round pick, Remington Award winner, 3-star kid from Pickerington. Kalis, every offer in the country, St. Ed's kid, left tackle, ended up playing guard at Michigan, didn't get drafted, didn't have as long of an NFL career, never won a major award, never beat Ohio State. So again, I pray that people get some semblance of sense when you watch the show, that don't just like, bookmark kids and say, okay, this kid's, because not everyone's JJ Smith. Not everybody shows up and dominates and is the best player on the team as a freshman. A lot of these kids have to develop, and if they don't, then the good thing about the portal is you can get them out of there. Nevada, do you have any thoughts on that? Because again, I know I go in my little like kind of exploratory conversations where I talk about guys that we didn't get, that, oh my God, how are we ever going to survive? We didn't get Seantrell Henderson and Kyle Kalis and Jackson Carman. It's like burned the whole building down. And then you look up and I'm like, wow, like we actually survived and we've been doing it for like 100 years. But your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm just kind of curious as to like, who was your biggest surprise? I'm talking about a player that maybe, I know you talk about kids and you see them and maybe you make an immediate judgment that they're not going to be able to play or something, or that they don't have the mental toughness or they don't have the right attitude. But who's been your biggest surprise in terms of a player that you either played with or coached that maybe you didn't have the greatest initial impression of or didn't think that they had, that developed? I'm talking about offensive linemen particularly. Was there anybody that leaps to mind that you're like, wow, when I initially met them, I initially saw them, I wasn't quite sure, and wow, they really balled out and turned out to be something spectacular?
Well, I mean, Steve Raring was one of the lower rated guys in his class, you know, and he was a big, tall guy, you know, heavy. He always had weight problems, but you know, he developed into a very, you know, competent guard for Ohio State. I mean, he started 3 years. Yeah, I mean, Kyle Mitchum was in the same class, and Kyle was the Army All American. Kyle's the guy that if you're betting money, you're saying, okay, that guy's going to be the 3 year starter and whatever. You know, and Steve didn't, you know, he didn't get a, a deal in the NFL or anything, but you know, he had a good, you know, 3 years of 30-ish starts or so. That was one that it surprised me, honestly. Jimmy Cordell came in to be a good player. You know, he was a guy. Him and Alex were in the same class together. Jimmy, you know, bounced around the NFL for a couple of years with the Giants, and he's coaching now. So Jimmy had a really nice career. He was a really good center, wicked smart. Wasn't strong, but he was really really smart. A guy that surprised me that he didn't play earlier, that developed into what I thought he'd develop into, was Corey Linsley. Corey Linsley was a guy that I was really high on because he was a bull in one-on-one pass rush. He was as good as I've ever seen. He was as good as like Nick Mangold. Like he would lock guys down, and for whatever reason, like he was in the doghouse or whatever it was. Again, I don't get to set the lineup when I'm a quality control coach. I'm just like basically a secretary who makes coffee and sharpens pencils, and I give my input when asked, but people aren't seeking out my input when you're a young guy. But I really liked him, and you know he like it's real famous in that fourth spring ball. I'll never forget. Like you know we're going through the spring meeting. We have like a meeting on like the before the spring game draft. We have a meeting, and we go over like the playing time restrictions because again, like you know when you're drafting a team, you want to know okay, if you draft Braxton Miller, you're going to have him for one drive. Okay, well he's not very valuable if he's going to play for one drive. Or if you draft, you know, Carlos Hyde, whoever. Like I mean, so we got kind of the pitch counts and like Jack and Corey, they got like the first half, which I thought was fair. You know, I mean Jack was a really good player. Corey hadn't played yet, but he was having a great spring. And I remember Vrabel was like, you know, like we're out of practice. He's like, I can't believe that you're out of restriction. You've never started a game. And I was like, and I told Corey, I was like, dude, like, prove him wrong. I was like, prove him wrong. I was like, you're having a great spring. And he was a guy that Urban hated. And then by the end of spring, he like loved him, called him the Apex and had all these little pet nicknames and stuff. But Corey was a guy that had, you know, obviously, you know, he just retired, you know, heart issue, whatever. But, unbelievable NFL career. Did great with Rodgers, highest paid center in NFL history with the LA Chargers. So yeah, it's funny he retired right when Harbaugh got there, so he got to dodge our boy Jimmy. But yeah, I'm trying to think of you know others, but I mean those are guys that kind of stood out to me. You know, I thought Connor Smith would be better. He was a guy that was as heralded of a player as I've ever seen on the O line. He's a 5-star kid from Coleraine, and you know, like again, I always think in a gambling sense, if you said, all right, Kirk, over under like one career start for Connor Smith, I would have bet every dime I had that he'd be, you know, multi-year starter. It's just off of his high school film. You know, he was a good athlete. And it doesn't materialize. So again, like, you know, there were guys that weren't as talented as Connor that ended up starting more and playing more. And again, Connor, really good kid. He's down in Cincinnati now, doing great. He's a kid that like I remember I told him his senior year, I was like, man, I wish he had one more year because we could use you for next year. Because he really came on in 2010. He was like our six man, but he still never really got the burn. I mean, Andy Miller ended up starting more games than Connor Smith, and I want to bet that, I would have thought that in a billion years. Are you surprised by any of those names, Nevada?
No, I mean, you know, it's always fun to kind of, you know, look back on these guys and see where they are because look, they all look obvious once they're done, but you know, with offensive line recruiting, it's just such, you know, I every time you mention a name, I can remember their recruitment. I remember the recruitment, and I remember either the excitement or the lack of excitement. about the commitment. And there, no, I've said this before, but Pat Elflein, there was nobody that people were less excited about than the Pat Elflein recruitment. I mean, I'm not saying people were down on him, but like nobody cared. Like absolutely nobody cared about Pat Elflein. And the fact that Pat can go on and be a Remington Award winner and a multi-millionaire in the NFL is just it's a great story and a cautionary tale to anybody discounting any recruits, because you just never know who the great ones are going to be, and he certainly turned out to be a great one. But I can remember that day like it was yesterday, and it was like a gigantic yawn. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're picking the plan B, plan C, plan D, low hanging local fruits, and whatever the heck that meant. But yeah, he turned out to be a pretty good football player.
Well, like the funny thing about Pat was like nobody was lower on him than Urban. I mean, Urban, man, when he showed up and saw Pat, and then you compound that with Jacoby. Yeah, so we have like, Jacoby's, 6 feet tall, Jacoby born, and then we have Pat who's, 6'1", whatever, 6'2" maybe. So you basically have two guys that in the eyes of like Mark Pantoni and Urban Meyer, like they're centers only, can't play anywhere else. They don't have any dreadlocks or gold teeth or felony convictions. So there's going to be, they're not going to be exactly what they want compared to what they were getting at Florida. But like I remember like he got jammed up. He did something dumb in the summer before he reported. Didn't graduate early, and then he had a surgery where he had some sort of a surgery. It was nothing like terrible, but it was a surgery, and like he got left off the Camp 105. So the Camp 105 is like in training camp, and again I don't know if the limits are any different now, but back then you only could have 105 guys at training camp. And Pat, and we had 85 guys on scholarship. Pat was one of the 85 on scholarship. They thought so little of Pat Elflein that they didn't even let him come to camp. So they let like 21 walk-ons go to camp over Pat. And again, Pat, I think he might have been out for a little bit with the surgery, but most guys, like if they have a surgery, like they're going to be in all the meetings. They're going to be in the meals, they're going to be out of practice. They're going to be working with Mickey Marotti in the pit, because if you're hurt, like, Urban's thing was like, well, we got to break them off. If they're hurt, if they tear their ACL, then they got to go do 6,000 push-ups and do curls with plates and do all, because like, it's like a punishment if you get hurt. So like they left Pat off the 105, man. And I was like, geez, this is rough. So like I would meet with him during my lunch break, which was like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to try to go through the install from that day, because I had to go like draw cards for the next practice and I had to go do the scripts for the next practice. So like, I'm talking like I had like 20 minutes to go meet in like an ancillary meeting room where nobody could see us and try to go through the install and talk through the stuff and help them and quiz them a little bit. But it was like 20 minutes. So it was literally nothing, like a 20-minute individual meeting. And then he had to leave. Like he wasn't allowed to go out to practice. He wasn't allowed to be in. I mean, I think he could come in the training room and get checked out for his little surgery, but he wasn't allowed to stand at practice. He wasn't allowed in the meetings. I mean, it was terrible. And I was like, oh man, like this is not a great start to the career. But he came a long way. And by like the middle of the season, Urban loved doing these scrimmages after practices where he would have it would either be like a full team scrimmage, and it wasn't the guys that played. It was all the AYOs, all you others, the guys that didn't play in the games, the young guys, the freshmen. And I think that those are great because, you get to see, you get to evaluate these guys and see them do some good on good, see them run the plays, not just run scout team cards and actually see who knows the offense. And we did a lot of drills that were like one-on-one drills. So it was like him versus Chris Carter. And I'll never forget this. I remember it like it was yesterday. Chris Carter weighed like 370 pounds. He's a big fat kid from Cleveland, JFK. And Elflein probably weighed 290. And they would do a one-on-one block. And Elflein like drove blocked him and dumped him on his head. And Chris outweighed him by like 90 pounds. So like that's not normal. And Pat was just like dogging him. And I told Urban, it was funny. I told Urban like that week or maybe the week prior, I said, Elflein's going to be really good. And he's like, you think so? And I was like, yeah, he's like, he gets it. He's tough. He's getting better every day. He's got a great mentality. And then like, he goes out there and just bulldozes Chris Carter. And like the next day in the meeting room, he looked at me, he's like, you're right. You said that Elflein was going to be really good. And I was like, I told you. Like I said, he doesn't look like much, but he gets the job done. He's not like, he's not Jonathan Ogden or anything, but he stays in front of people, moves his feet. He's tough as nails. You set your watch to him doing everything the right way. So yeah, again, that's why, like, I don't just like can guys, now again, there's a lot of guys that are 3-star projects that they act like they've arrived or they don't do whatever. Elfun was the opposite, man. And again, I always think that there's this theory that like when you're an Ohio kid, you just don't want to be the bust, man. You don't want to be the guy that gets the offer. And then like when you don't make it at Ohio State or you don't play or you do play and you suck and you get benched and they put someone in like from, who's younger than you or the same class as you, and then they take your spot. Like that's like a faith. That's a fate that's like as bad as it can get. Cause like, I mean, you don't want to be the guy that you go back to your hometown or you go around town and you're like, man, he never should have got that offer. He was more of like an Akron kid or a Otterbein kid than an Ohio State kid. But he fooled them, and they got that offer. So, and again, I think that it's different now that we're so national. But when we were like a more state centric, I always felt like that was like a pressure. And I talked about that to like guys like AJ and even like Elfline, and I was like, "You guys feel that?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." Absolutely. Because again, you don't want to be the guy that doesn't make it that goes to Ohio State, because it's like the ultimate double-edged sword to get that offer. Because you want to go, but you better go out there and ball. You better not be the guy that gets beat out and stinks, and you come back around and you're like, yeah, you should have never had that offer, because that's what everybody wants to think. All right, Nevada, any thoughts? We can get to some super chats we're getting.
No, I'm excited to see. I mean, this weekend, this is going to be another great weekend. I'm just not used to these great recruiting weekends being in June. It's hard to kind of wrap my mind around. I'm so used to them being around the big games, the Michigan games, the Penn State games, the big intersectional games, the Texas game. And so having these back-to-back great recruiting weekends in June is going to get some getting used to. But I'm adapting. So let's go.
Super excited about it. Ben G, thank you for being an Ultra member. Thank you for the 10. Appreciate you, my friend. Who determines recruiting eval / offer criteria, day or position coaches? Do you think that Locke / Fry are looking for or have changed much from their predecessors? Any recruiting feedback on the new coaches? Nevada, do you want me to take this to start? Just because I've kind of lived this.
Sure, I'll let you take. You don't have to guess, so you can tell exactly.
Okay,
how it
so
works.
I'll be brief because I know it was a little long there. So in terms of who determines the recruiting evaluation offer criteria, a lot of times, Mark Pantoni will identify the initial round of, okay, here's the 25 offensive linemen that we think can play at Ohio State. So then the position coach will watch them. Something that Urban did that I loved was like, we would evaluate everybody as a staff. I'm talking about like, all of the entire coaching staff, offensive and defensive, would sit in a meeting room and we watch the top 10 running backs in the country. So like, when I was there, we watched Derek Green, we watched Ezekiel Elliott, we watched all these guys, and you graded it. A 1+ was a guy that is like, go get him right now, take him today, hammer down to go get him. A 1 is a guy that you're going to try to get to camp, try to, have him, try to evaluate him more, get more film, go see him in person. If he's a quarterback, go watch him throw. If he's another athlete, go watch him run track, go watch him, dunk a basketball, whatever. And then a 1- is a guy that can't play here. So you have like, that's how you grade each guy. So, we'd sit there and we'd watch like Derek Green. I thought was a 1+. Obviously he ended up not doing anything in college. Ezekiel was a 1+. They both had terrible competition they went against, but they were both good. But, something Mark Pantoni said that was really profound is like, the thing about Derek Green is like, he looks the part. Like he looked, he was ripped, big, strong kid, looked like LaDainian Tomlinson. And, but he didn't dominate against really bad competition. And that was something that was a big red flag for Mark Pantoni. And I thought that was something that was really astute and really smart. And it's like, Ezekiel, when you watch him, playing at that little dinky St. Louis Christian school that he played at, I mean, he destroyed I don't know if he ran for 300 yards every game, but it just seemed like it, because you turn the tape on and every single click is, every single snap is 70-yard run, 60-yard run, screen pass for 80 yards. I mean, it was incredible. But he's playing against like the Sisters of the Poor, so I don't know. But we in general, the coaches, they make the case for the offers. And again, there's offers and there's offers where there's fake offers and real offers. And there's offers that are, hey, you sign up and, like when I got offered by Jim Tressel, I could show up and commit, and I did like an hour later. But now it's like you offer a kid and say, well, the offer is contingent upon you coming to camp and getting a 3.5 and, hitting the Powerball. And there's all these like these stupid contingent offers, but that's just the way of the world now. But Ryan Day generally has to sign off on a guy before you give him an offer, like a full offer. Because if a kid's gonna jump in the boat, like you better make sure the head coach has signed off on it. But yeah, I think that it's an interesting deal. And again, I'm sure it's changed a little bit since they've got 20 people in the recruiting department when they used to only have 2. But I think that it's also it's a thing where you want to make sure that you've got as many guys signed off on it, especially if it's an offer, like a real offer. Like you want to have Chip Kelly signed off on it. You want to have Justin Fry, the O-line coach. Just depending on where it is, like you want as many guys signed off on it as possible. Just so that like you're not seeing things or it is. Like, I mean, it's a big decision to give a guy a real scholarship at Ohio State because if he jumps in, man, you're kind of stuck with him at least until you try to process him out. Do you think Locke and Fry are looking for a change much from their predecessors? I don't know. I mean, I think that Justin Fry hasn't had near the success that Greg Studwire did on the recruiting trail. Now, I know that Greg Studwire is depicted as the laziest recruiter in the history of mankind, but he landed more 5-star offensive linemen than any O-line coach in Ohio State history. And you go check the resume. I mean, go look at Rivals, go look at 247, all those recruiting sites. Like, he was nailing it. And now, again, I don't know if that's because of Stud. I don't know if that's because of Urban Meyer. I don't know if that's because of, we served, chicken noodle soup when they were on the official visit and that made him commit or whatever. But something was working back then that hasn't been working. So I don't think that they've changed much. I think that in general, like my theory about big guys don't like to go far from home is very accurate. When you see, when you look at where does Texas and LSU and Alabama and Georgia and where do they get their big people from? Where do they get their defensive tackles and their offensive guards and their offensive tackles from? They're usually within 5 hours of the school, usually. Now, they might get a random kid out of California or South Florida or whatever, but that's usually what it is. Unless there's some crazy NIL deal where like Samson Okunlola goes to Miami, which, again, I think was a disastrous mistake thus far, but we'll see. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. So I don't think they've changed. I mean, obviously, Coach Locke is doing a great job. I think he's a lot more aggressive. I don't think he's going to get caught lacking like Tony Alford did, where like we didn't take a running back the one cycle, which, again, that's another one of those bets where if you said Nevada, if you said Kirk, for the rest of your next 10 years, what are the odds that we have a class where we get 0 running backs? I'd say name the odds, and I'm going to take them just because like that should never happen in the history of Ohio State football. And I don't think it ever had until that year that Mark Fletcher left us at the altar. But I think Locke's he's been aggressive. Recruiting feedback on the new coaches. I think Chip Kelly's reinvigorated from what I've talked. The guys I've talked to, Chip Kelly has got it's like he got the chains and the shackles taken off of him from being at a dead program in UCLA, a program that, when you talk about the 4 Pac-12 teams that have just moved into the Big Ten, like they are way down there at 4 behind Washington, USC, Oregon. I mean, they're like 100 miles away from the 3rd place team, which is probably Washington. But again, I just think that, the lack of NIL would be infuriating. It would be exhausting because, you're just not playing, you're bringing a bare fist to like a machine gun fight, when you're doing recruiting. And now he's got he's got a fresh new AR-15. So he can actually win these battles because he's going to have the NIL backing and he's going to have Ryan Day's offense and he's going to have Mickey Marotti and he's going to have Heartline's receivers. So I think it just injects nitrous oxide into his recruiting efforts because, I'd be excited if I went from no money, no NIL money, no excitement. We're not winning very much. We might be getting fired after this year too. Man, this is awesome. I get to coach ball and take my quarterbacks and I get to run my offense and call my plays and I get all this NIL cash to spend. Like, this is amazing. So I think Chip is doing great work, and I think that him and Ryan together evaluating quarterbacks is a dream for us. So Nevada Benji asks, and again, thank you for the 10. Who determines recruiting eval/offer criteria, day or the position coach? Do you think that Locke/Fry are looking for or has changed much from their predecessors, and any recruiting feedback on the new coaches?
Well, yeah, I think you did a great job of kind of laying out the process. And but what I'll point, and just because it is on topic, and I do want to mention this because it's relevant. You have players where the position coach will bang the table and go, "I want to get this guy into the class." And to me, that's where Stud really kind of shined because the two notable ones were Thayer Munford and Dewan Jones. Those were guys that were not consensus picks. They were not picks from Mark Pantoni or from anybody else. And Stud went to war on those things, and he banged the table and said, "I want these two guys, in the class." He was willing to put his reputation on it, and he did. And those guys turned out to be two really good football players right there. And I think that's the kind of stuff that you're looking for from your coach, especially at a position like offensive line where things are so uncertain. But to do that for Thayer, to do that for Dewan, to me that was really when Stud was really kind of at his best because national recruiting, we've talked about. I think this is an underrated point that you made earlier. On the big recruits, it's always on the head coach. The big 5-star recruits, that's an Urban Meyer joint. On the big 5-star, David Sanders, man, that's Ryan Day. Ryan Day is in there. This is a 5-star kid. This is a number 1, number 2 kid in the entire class. The head coach has got to help out on those guys. And so it's not fair to just put it on the position coach. The position coach has got to lay the foundation, but the head coach has got to bring them home. As for running backs, there's never been a lazier or dumber recruiter than Alford. I mean, getting left at the altar by Fletcher was one of the most predictable being left at the altar things. I mean, everybody knew. Everybody knew it was happening. The only person that seemed shocked by that was Tony Alford. So no, we're not going to get left at the altar this year. I've been saying all along it's going to be 3 kids. I'm still sticking with it. I think it's going to be that Davison, Bo Jackson, and I would say Isaiah West. Maybe it's not going to be. Maybe he doesn't want to come here and be the third fiddle. But I really think it's going to be a 3 running back class. The running back room is awful lonely after you lose Quinshon and Trey this year. They're going to need recruits, and they're going to get them. And I think Locke is a relentless recruiter, unbelievable in the room, just a great mentor, a father figure type of leader type for these kids. And he's a kid that the parents really want to send their kids to. So excited to have him. He's doing a great job.
Yeah, I agree, and what a dynamic dude, man. That guy has a different cat now, man. He went from being a volunteer in the weight room at Memphis, 7 years ago, to being the head running backs coach at Ohio State. I mean, that's like record time. So I like that. Grinder doesn't forget where he came from. He's got good roots in Alabama, which is great, especially now that Nick Saban's gone. We can go fishing down there and try to find us some skill players, which is awesome. Jim Jackson, thank you for the 10. Appreciate you, my friend. I hope that your wife's beauty parlor is coming along, and you got to drop that name in your next super chat so that I can shout it out. Hey, Kirk, you've alluded to Tavian St. Clair a couple times as a future at Buckeye QB. Thoughts on a potential Julian Sain versus Tavian St. Clair showdown to lead us to the chip? I'm picking Julian Sain. I think Julian Sain is going to be. He's going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in school history, just based on his talent, this offense, the way that he's going to have skill everywhere, the way he can distribute the ball, the way he can process. I mean, he is a special processor. This guy goes through information quick. He got the book as quick as anyone Ryan Day's ever had. I talked to people they can't believe how good this kid is. And it's not just, his throwing, because again, the hardest part about Julian Sain is he looks like he's like 12 years old. So he doesn't look like some, monster like Ben Roethlisberger or whatever, but he looks like Aaron Rodgers to me. Like, I think this guy is like, he can get around in the pocket. Again, I got a tape on right now, and he's got a little bit of agility where he can get out of stuff, but he also, He's got a lot of whip in his arm when he throws the ball, but he knows where to go with it as quick as anybody we've had. So, I mean, he's again, I think CJ obviously is the standard bearer at this point, where he's going to be the highest paid guy in the NFL in 3 years when he re-ups. But I really like Julian Sane, and again, that's not to denigrate Tavian St. Clair, but I just think Julian Sane is as good as we've had. I think he's got a ceiling that's like CJ's, where he could be a top 5 pick. And like I said, you guys can say, Kirk, you're crazy, Kirk, you're whatever, but when Ryan Day says some craziness at a press conference, like, well, Julian Sane has to get ready to play against Oregon, and he has to get ready to play against Michigan and Penn State, and we're going to need Julian. I'm like, that, like, to say that about an early enrollee freshman who plays quarterback when you already have Will Howard and Devin Brown and Lincoln Keenholz, and I mean, that is some gaudy praise. I mean, I'm just being real. Like, I mean, most freshmen, you're just hoping that they don't, vomit every time they take a snap, vomit all over the field. But this kid, they said, hey, you got to be ready to play against Oregon. So tells me all I need to know. And again, we'd already heard that. I mean, we've done nuggets galore on BuckeyeScoop.com. We've talked about, his development, how good he is on the grease board in meetings. He's just absolutely mind blowing. And Ryan's saying so. Like, I mean, I don't know if Ryan's ever said something like that about an early enrollee freshman at the quarterback position. There's no way. I mean, he can say it about JJ Smith, because obviously JJ Smith's going to be our starting X this year. But I really like Julian, and I think that the offense is going to be just wicked when he gets to run it, which could be as early as next year. I mean, he's going to battle with Devin, and may the best man win. Nevada, your thoughts on Jim Jackson? Again, thank you for the 10. It says, hey, Kirk, you've alluded to Tavian St. Clair a couple times as a future Buckeye QB. Thoughts on a potential Sane versus Tavian showdown to lead us to a championship?
Yeah, I think, the risk of this is whenever we praise one kid, generally people take it like we're being negative about somebody else, and that's absolutely not the case. So, but yeah, I'm a huge Julian Sane fanboy. I've heard enough things about him that make me really excited to think that he's got kind of a sky's the limit type of potential. I haven't heard enough. I mean, look, Tavian St. Clair is who he is. Great high school player. Haven't seen him in kind of a college setting yet. Do I think he can be great? Absolutely. But, I mean, Julian's going to have such a head start having been here ahead of him. Just the way he was raised, and as polished as he is, as advanced as he is mentally, and as advanced as he is here at Ohio State, again, having had a full year under Ryan Day and Chip Kelly before Tavian ever sets foot on the campus, he's going to be tough to beat. But again, none of that is a knock at Tavian St. Clair, at Lincoln, at Devin, at anybody else. I just think I totally agree with you. I think Julian Sane is going to kind of redefine the standard for Ohio State quarterbacks, and that's saying something. But I think he's that good.
Yep, I am totally with you on that. Calvin Atchley, thank you for the 20. Appreciate you, my friend. I love the show and have a tremendous amount of respect for how you two treat veterans. Well, I mean, my father-in-law is a veteran. Nevadabuck's father, God rest his soul, is a veteran. They're all around us. Appreciate them. My father's retired Army vet and retired police officer. He's now running his home repair business, Handyman Home Support LLC. I do not know where that is, but if you want to throw that in the chat, I'm sure that Kim or somebody will text it to me, the location of it. Because again, I love when you guys plug your businesses. Like, you want to throw that in a super chat, I'm happy to read it. I think that a lot of people on here want to take care of each other. So, don't be shy now. Like, I mean, again, like I like to, we hype the businesses that help us, like, like Buffalo Wild Wings, like Twin Peaks. And again, I think that it's great to, when people need to get something done, if they can get it from a Scoop family member, let's do it. But I really appreciate those kind words. Again, Nevada, Calvin says, I love the show and have tremendous amount of respect for how you two treat veterans. My father's a retired Army vet and retired police officer. He is now running his home repair business, Handyman Home Support LLC. Nevada, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are, yeah, shout out your business if you're a veteran-owned business on top of that, then definitely shout it out. We're this is what this show should be. This show is not just information, us talking to you guys. It's a community, and we learn from you guys. We learn a lot about you. We love hearing about what you guys are doing, and we absolutely want to support whatever businesses that you have. While we have paid sponsors, as Kirk said, the big national ones, the Buffalo Wild Wings and Twin Peaks and the like. You have a local business, put it out there. We'll shout it out for you. And to all the Scoop family members, patronize these businesses, because that's what this should be about. It's about paying it forward, not just not just in the sense, but pay it forward in your everyday life, and try to help each other out. And so, yeah, please put us the name, let us know the location, and we'll promote it.
Yeah, appreciate you, my man, and tell your father thank you. ZZM, thank you for the 5. Thanks for being an Ultra member as well. Is it a coincidence that the playing field is level, yet now we're smoking teams on the recruiting trail we didn't used to? I've been saying that. Nevada OH.
IO.
Well, yeah, like again, I've said 1,000 times, and I know that there's a lot of people that they want that old thing back, like the song, like I want that old thing back, but I don't. I love NIL. I think NIL is the greatest thing that's ever happened to college football, because now, like, we can pay kids. Like, when we would lose these kids at the the last hour of recruiting, they'd flip and go to Auburn, or they go to Florida State, or they go wherever, and they get a big bag of cash, or they'd pay their high school coach, or they'd pay their handler or their third uncle or whatever. Like, that used to kill us. But now all the cards are on the table, and love it. I love it more than anything in the history of college football, because for me, I want us to be as good as we can possibly be. I want us to be a dominant force forever. And the way things are set up now, like, we're doing great. Again, I think that our recruiting is great. Again, I think we have the right approach with NIL, where it's not all about NIL, but if you come here, you can get a little scratch, and you're not going to be eating ramen noodles and sleeping in the dorms. Like, you can get a nice little apartment if you're good enough. But again, I think that in the past, like, we didn't do that. It's just like with with our basketball program, like when we had Thad Matta, like, I mean, we really, again, we still got Greg Oden and Mike Conley. I don't know how we did that without paying those guys, but Thad's big thing was, like, he wasn't going to pay them like Kentucky would, and like a lot of these schools would, and we would lose kids, at the last hour because of the bagmen. And again, I think that it's an easy cop out sometimes. I don't think that every time we lost a guy was because of the bagman. I think sometimes we just didn't recruit well enough, or we got beat, but I don't think it's always just a fair and square beating, in my opinion. But Nevada, I would love your thoughts, because you've been around the block, even longer than I have when it comes to recruiting. ZZM says, again, thank you for the 5, thank you for an Ultra member. Is it a coincidence that the playing field is level, yet now we're smoking teams on the recruiting trail that we didn't used to? Your thoughts, Nevada?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's, Saban's gone. And you think about it, who would we lose a lot of these recruits to? Alabama and some of those schools. So Saban's gone. There's we're kind of the now program. But no, I think Ohio State has learned how to. I wanted to use the words weaponize, but I guess that's not the right word. But operationalize NIL to a point where like, you can bring it to a point where it almost becomes not a factor, if that makes sense. That our NIL program is sufficient enough that it's not the deciding factor for all these kids. And I think you made a really good point that for years and years and years, I'd hear we'd lose a kid, and immediately you'd hear from Ohio State, can't beat cash money. The bag man got it. And that wasn't always the case. Sometimes we just got beat, and it was just kind of a convenient excuse that Ohio State would pull out and throw out that, the kid got bought. That's not always the case. But I think that now with NIL, the way that we're playing, given our stature in the college football world, given our ability to put kids into the NFL, no, we're not losing on those kids. But the best thing about NIL to me is just keeping kids in college. The fact that we were able to keep, Hancock and Burke and JT and Jack and Ty Lee and Trey and et cetera, et cetera. That is the real untold story of NIL, something that we would have never seen before. We're getting to see more of these kids in college football than we would have before. And that's the big secret of NIL. That's the big success of the NIL program. Not that we're paying all these freshmen, $1 million or 500. That's not to me the great news of NIL. It's keeping kids longer in college football that would ordinarily have made a choice to go on the pros. I think that's the big story of NIL, and that's why I'm excited about it.
And again, that's a fantastic point by you, like to point out, hey, we got a bunch of guys that, 8 years ago, they never would have stayed, ever. I mean, there was a point, man, where it was like every year we're losing 5, 6, 7 guys, 3 and out. And that's crippling, or 3 and out, or redshirt juniors who left a fifth year on the table. But now I think that it that's something that if I was Ryan Day, Mark Pantoni, and Justin Fry, whoever, Carlos Loughlin, I'm weaponizing that. Say, hey, why don't you ask Trey Henderson what it's like to be in Columbus? See what he thinks of it. I mean, because, a running back, good running backs never stay for 4 years. And Trey's a great running back. And he stuck around. Got a little bit of scratch, which obviously helps. Columbus is a great city. A lot of stuff, a lot of positives. Like, this isn't, the thing that I think is most attractive about Ohio State, in the current, state, is the fact that, we got a lot of guys that want to stay here. They like it here. The culture is great. They like the coaches. They like, they get a little bit of NIL scratch. They like the city. The schools, school's good. Like, I mean, there was a time I felt like, where guys just couldn't wait to get out. Guys, and again, the NIL is the big change, but I think that's, when you can talk to kids and have Ty Leak talk to a kid, or you can have JT Tuimoloau talk to a kid, or Jack Sawyer, or Trey Henderson, or whoever, then you can sprinkle in the transfers like Will Howard and Will Kazmarek and Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Downs, and you can say, man, all of these guys, it's like a gravitational pull that's like pulling these guys all in and keeping them here, and they like it. They're happy about it. They're not trapped. I think that's really a compelling thing that you can talk about in recruiting. Because again, it's easy, money is great. Obviously, like with these kids getting paid, NIL, the whole shebang, it's great. But, there's a lot of people that are miserable that have a lot of money. So there's some of these kids that they get these NIL deals and then they're stuck in a bad program, losing, like I look at those guys that go to the Miami Hurricanes and they get ran out of the gym by like Duke. And I'm just like, they got all the money, they got a big bag of money, but like they suck. They play for a bad program, bad team, bad culture. But kids up here, man, they love it. They're sticking around. They're developing. They've got a mission. They've got like a different culture. I just think it's really compelling. And again, I think your thing about Nick Saban being gone is spot on. It's not just Nick Saban being gone. Dabo has fallen on hard times. The Florida Gators stink. Because when they had Urban, they were a monster to go against. Even like USC, like in the Pete Carroll days, which it's been a hot minute, like they were formidable to go against. So it's like you look at like some of the superpowers, and they don't have the recruiting chops that they have. And even like Michigan with Lloyd Carr, Jim Harbaugh, like I think that they've taken a step back too as well. So there's a lot of the superpowers that they're just not as, I guess, automatic as they used to be. Now Georgia is on the come. Georgia is obviously top 2 program in the country. Oregon's on the come up, but when teams like Clemson and Bama and Florida are down from a recruiting stretch, that opens up a lot of areas for us. Because like if Florida was really good, I'd be a lot more worried about like Vernell Brown or SFE kids. Because if Florida was like Urban Meyer Florida, he'd be raiding SFE and taking all the best players because that's how he was. But when they're a dumpster fire and they're probably going to fire their coach after this year, hard for me to send my son there if I'm Vernell Brown's father. I'm just being honest. Jeremy Moreland, thank you for the 10. I hope you are great, brother. I hope you had fun with your wife and Doreen and her husband at the Crawfish Fest. It looked awesome. Thank you for the 10. Thanks for being an Ultra member. Now that these guys do so many visits and recruiting has changed, when do most of these guys sign? Go Bucks. December. They still sign in December. I think a lot of them want to decide before their senior seasons just in case of an injury. but they're still signing in December. That was something that they moved up from February. It honestly kind of sucks. It kind of killed signing dates. Like signing day in February used to be awesome, like as a message Ohio State, a Buckeye Scoop message board type thing. But now it's December. Nevada, any thoughts on that? Jeremy asks, now that these guys do so many visits and recruiting exchange, when the most of these guys sign, I mean, it's December, right?
Yeah, they still have two signing days, but the only one matters, the early one in December, and then after that you'll get the occasional signature in February on the traditional one. But the February one used to be, like you said, that was like Christmas, New Year's, and Fourth of July all rolled into one, and now, like I said, a little anticlimactic, but probably better for all involved that they it gets done. We don't have to wait till February to see who we're going to get. And for a team like Ohio State, I think it's to their advantage.
Yeah, I think that's a huge deal when you look at the fact that these kids all want to enroll early now. Like, and so Ohio State is trying to get guys out, and I can imagine Mark Pantoni's pulling his hairs out when he's finding, not in a bad way, but like when you find out you've got all these kids coming back that normally never would have came back, like you got to try to find space and you got to process kids to make sure there's enough spots for when these kids show up January 3rd or whatever for winter semester, because that's a huge deal for these kids, because these kids want to get rolling. I mean, like JJ Smith got up here, got acclimated, killed it in winter workouts, killed it in spring football, and now he's looking like a starter. So I mean, that's kind of the role that these guys want, and it hurts guys like Brandon Ennis. Like Brandon Ennis couldn't do it because of heritage. His high school American Heritage had a rule where he they wouldn't let him graduate early, and there was no condition they'd let him do it. And he fell behind Carnell. Carnell was able to do it, and it's not a be all end all. Like I didn't graduate early. I mean, I didn't show up till August. So these guys are showing up in January. I mean, they have an 8-9 month head start on me, but a lot of these guys, they like to get in and get rolling early, and I think that it is beneficial, but I think it depends on the position, because for a lot of these guys, man, like the Armstrong twins and stuff, like they're probably going to redshirt. I'd be shocked if they played this year. So you're basically end up being here for like 6 years when you get here in January, and then you redshirt, and then you play 5 years potentially. So it's a long career. Like Steve Ring did that, and it was like he was here forever. So, well, Nevada, I think we can wrap the show up. Any final thoughts?
No, just got a huge recruiting weekend coming up this weekend, and it's going to be interesting to see who they get in. It'll be interesting to see who there from Ohio State is there to kind of shepherd them the way the Sanchez family did this week, which was amazing. And yeah, I think you're starting to see more of these national crystal balls kind of flipping for Ohio State, kind of getting on all the stuff that you guys already know. But Ohio State killed it this weekend. I think they're going to continue it and kill this next weekend as well. And I think we should have a passel full of commitments here over the next few weeks. So buckle up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's going to be an absolute fantastic ride through the summer. And if you guys want the best Ohio State coverage, join BuckeyeScoop.com. Our website is always cracking. We signed up a few new members this weekend and some pay it forward members as well. So we appreciate all of you guys jumping into the fold on BuckeyeScoop.com. Again, we spend about an hour a day podcasting, and the other 23 hours a day we're on the message board, and it is cracking. So again, I appreciate you guys so very much. Again, it's another great show. It's a huge show because you guys made it one. So thank you. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys enjoyed it, please leave us a like. Click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell. You get an alert every time we go live, which is usually around 7 o'clock every night. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out where you guys are watching it from. Shout out who you guys are watching with. Shout out my Southern Ohio boys. Shout out my Florida Buckeyes, Georgia, Tennessee, my Cape Coral Buckeye. You know who you are. Appreciate you, my man. Thanks for jumping in the fold on BuckeyeScoop.com. California, everywhere, New York, the entire country, all over the globe. Thank you all for tuning in, as always. I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.